Welcome to the Bias Buzz. I'm Don Irvine. He's Brian McNichol.
Good morning.
All right. Always lots of news. Always hard to kind of decide what we're going to talk about. Well, we'll start with some things that were trending on Facebook and Twitter and in the news for that matter, which are things that are happening at Fox News. So we have two things really there. We had that came simultaneously yesterday, the announcement that Fox was settling with Gretchen Carlson on her sexual harassment lawsuit for about $20 million, and also the departure of Greta Van Susteren. So these are two kind of, they're different, but they're also, I think, somewhat interrelated. What are your thoughts on this, Brian?
One of my Democratic friends emailed me yesterday, and he said, suddenly Gretchen looks a lot more attractive to him with the $20 million check. I think they did what they had to do, get off the table. It's obvious that the culture they described was true. This seems to happen in these things. ESPN had this problem at one time, and Mike Tirico was in the middle of it, and there was some letters sent and checks written and so forth. The interesting one to me, and I think they did the right thing to put it behind them and just pay the money, but what happened to Greta? She just walked off, done. And it supposedly has to do with terms of the contract. She's a more valuable commodity to them without Gretchen Carlson. So I don't know. I don't know what happened, and it'll be interesting to find out.
Yeah. So with Gretchen, I mean, I wasn't sure when she first filed the lawsuit exactly what was going on there. I mean, she disappeared from the air, but she was in about the 2 o'clock time slot. So frankly, I didn't notice, and I don't think a lot of viewers noticed either. Fox just kind of fills in, and they don't give a lot of explanation. And I think the time slot is fine without Gretchen. I've never been a big Gretchen fan when she was on Fox and Friends or anything like that, but for whatever reason, they had been enamored with her. Yeah, the culture. I mean, I think the real thing that got them there was just that apparently she had secretly recorded some conversations, I guess, with IELTS. So that pretty much sealed the deal there. And I'm glad that they got out of the way. I mean, I think that is the Murdochs, the boys taking over, and they're just trying to wipe that slate clean and move on from that. Gretchen's departure, Greta's Van Susteren's departure was kind of surprising because it was just boom. It was just like that. Right. Now, her Facebook page did talk about this a little bit more. She apparently informed Fox last Thursday that she was going to do this, and she said that Fox has not felt like a home for the last several years, but she's been happy to collect the money in the meantime. So she's gone. Brit Hume takes over that slot. I will say a couple things about this. One is that when Greta was hired, it raised a lot of eyebrows because she's not a conservative. She's married to a liberal. There's nothing that ever has shown that she's really a conservative.
She also gave them a lot of credibility, though.
Yeah, she did. I mean, I think that was why they hired her, was that they were looking for credibility. And newspapers do the same thing. The Washington Times kind of did the same thing when they started back in 1982, is that they hired some liberal reporters because they needed instant credibility. So this isn't something that's unusual for networks or newspapers to do. They will kind of compromise a little bit to be able to gain a little of that credibility right away from the get-go. But the other thing is with her is she is a valuable commodity, as you say, in terms of the ratings and things like that. Can Brit Hume hold that up through the election? I don't know. But I think the other thing that's interesting about this is just that she was a staunch defender of Roger Ailes. Right. And so I looked at it initially as like, how coincidental is this? Even though she said she told him on Thursday, the timing of the announcement of this lawsuit being settled, her defense of Ailes, and now she says, I'm leaving.
Right.
Boom.
And now, it'll be interesting to see where she turns up because, Ailes is, moved to helping Trump. And a lot of these, the shots they were calling were bad for a long time. That's starting to change. And I have to believe that's because of him. I think he knows how to move the thinking on stuff. And you can tell it in the polls tightening and so forth.
Yeah, and Greta, because she's not a conservative, if she made a move to CNN, go back to her old home if they wanted her, or even to MSNBC, it wouldn't be that big a deal. Right. It wouldn't be a stretch for her. She probably would feel more comfortable politically there than she has been at Fox.
Yeah.
So and she had said that she could always return to teaching, but she does want to continue her broadcasting career. So we'll kind of see where that goes. I don't expect to see her necessarily on Newsmax or something like that, right?
Right.
All right. Another thing that's coming up today, we're not going to be able to discuss much of this really because we don't know for sure what's going on, but the new iPhone 7 is being released. And so that's created a lot of buzz, because the big buzz about this is that the rumor is that Apple is doing away with the headphone jack. This is causing a lot of consternation in the blogosphere with all the techies and everything like that, trying to figure out they're going to have to actually start using Bluetooth and buying Bluetooth headsets. Apple has a long history of making some pretty radical changes that eventually you have to go along and get along with. And even though it's a new iPhone, I mean, we're shooting in Periscope using my 6 Plus. I don't plan to get another phone. I've had this phone for nearly 2 years. I really don't. There's not enough incremental improvement for me in the phone to say I need another one. Plus, the model has changed on phones. I don't know what kind of phone you have, but there's, before on the 2-year cycle and get the $199 deal or less or whatever, we were all like lemmings. We'd always go out and buy those darn things. Now that we pay the full price and not necessarily obligated to the whole 2 years and all that stuff, it has changed the dynamic. I think people will hang on to their phones longer.
Right, and I think the way the phones are put together now is they're anticipating a longer life. I think they've sort of moved from the turn it back in model, the library model, to, you own this for a while. But on the other hand, when you hear something's new, a lot of people are going to gravitate to it. Is it Bluetooth time? I mean, it's certainly a technology that we've known about a long time, but it's not really broken through. And it's like it's also a demographic, like socioeconomic thing. Certain people there, like if you go to a casino, every other person has a Bluetooth, right? But around here, you don't see them much.
Right, and I use my phone a lot in the gym to listen to podcasts or to listen to Rush or something like that. I would have to look for a Bluetooth that actually, while I'm on the elliptical or whatever, doesn't fall out of my ears, or is there something that's comfortable over the ear? But there's just a lot of things, and I really don't see, I don't see anybody using a Bluetooth headset of any kind in the gym. There are a lot of ramifications with this. Now, Apple does have. They may even see a little bit of a boost in sales because of Samsung. Their Note 7. They're recalling them, or kind of not an official recall, but they're basically telling customers to return them, and they'll get a credit, or they can get another phone potentially because they've had exploding phones. The problem for Samsung is that they don't have enough phones to replace all the phones. They've sold like, what is it, a billion phones, whatever it is. Yeah. It's going to cost them like $1.5 billion to replace all, to take care of this. It's a disaster for them financially, but here's Apple coming out with their phone. Even though the phone's not going to be probably ready for somebody's hands for a couple weeks, it still may be quicker than getting the replacement Samsung phone.
That's
so,
right.
So they may be able to eat into that market that Samsung has been stealing away from them.
That's a new tactic. It's like mess up the one so everyone wants rid of it, and then roll out the new one. So
and the funny thing too is when I was listening to this tech blog, a guy called in about the Samsung, and he says there are actually little numbers with them, and this, he says there's the export model is the Note 7e. He says I think that stands for exploding.
Yeah.
So nothing that Samsung would want to be affiliated with. Turning to a little more somber news, and Phyllis Schlafly died the other day, age 92. Definitely a conservative icon. Really, probably the last of that group that came from the 60s and 70s in the conservative movement that really set the pace and were set the trend, and were just did everything that has allowed the conservative movement to be what it is today.
Also, blazed a trail for conservative women, right? Where are you if you're a conservative woman? It's like, she was against the Equal Rights Amendment, which, was pro-woman thing. She pointed out the flaws of it. She boundless energy, wrote books, ran for office, helped other people do 1,000 things, served on a ton of boards, incredible personal energy, and showed that there's a way to be if you think like a conservative, that's not incompatible with being a woman, which the other side tries to make it as. So it was a strong, important figure in U.S. history.
Right, exactly. And, on the Equal Rights Amendment, what was it, 35 states had actually passed that?
Yeah.
So
she jumped in at the last minute.
She jumped, and she to turn that back. I saw a piece today saying that, really the feminists really owe her debt of gratitude for defeating it, because it was a disaster.
Right.
It would have led to it would have been a disaster for feminists had that actually passed.
Right.
It would have been tied up in courts and all these kinds of things. And really as time has evolved, a lot of things they were fighting for, those are all coming to pass anyway.
Yeah.
So did you really need a constitutional amendment to take care of this?
Yeah, that puts you in all these other inviolable situations. The other thing is our liberal friends have not behaved well on this. The remarks about her on Twitter and Facebook and the news and so forth, deplorable conduct. I mean, someone's dead. You can't say something nice. At that point, don't say anything, right? But just to come out and savage her in that way, and most people don't know what she actually did. Most of the stuff I read was they didn't understand who they were talking about anyway. All they knew was conservative woman who beat the ERA.
Right, and that's the media narrative. You see that over and over, and so especially like the younger millennials or whatever, who didn't really have an understanding of who Phyllis was and what she fought for and what she stood for, they will just follow that liberal line and just say, well, that's terrible. She fought against the Equal Rights Amendment. She was really anti-woman, anti-feminist, but she, as you said, she blazed the trail for women, for conservative women, for all women in a lot of ways, and yeah, as you said too, enormous amount of energy. Just she was 92 and she still attended the Republican National Convention. She was for Trump. I mean, she was making this case for Trump, and that was a kind of a risky thing for her to do. Was she jumped out there early on that?
Right.
But she may actually be proven right in the end. We don't know. I mean, to think that he's survived all of that, and there he is, and so so Trump has Trump tweeted out like that and kind of put in that little thing about and get her book.
Yeah, that's right.
So he's going to help her sell books.
Sell books.
Even in death. We'll move from that to the Trump campaign this past week. To me, it was a surprise hire. I didn't see this coming. Dave Bossy, deputy campaign manager. Now, Dave, running Citizens United, I've known Dave for a long, long time. He has gotten more involved in politics in Maryland. He just was elected the national committee man in Maryland, beat a guy had done it for 12 or 16 years or something like that. And so he was getting more involved. But this is a very interesting hire because, I think Dave is really he's a very committed conservative, and he's a bulldog.
Yeah, and he is on the Clintons. I think the skill he brings to the table is Clintonology. Long history of hounding them and following their lies and trying to tie up the loose ends that they leave. I think it's an interesting hire too. It doesn't seem like opposition research. I think the FBI has done a lot of your opposition research for you. Was a weakness of the Trump campaign, but I think that the attacks on her will take on new form and be informed by things that again the passage of time has we've stopped thinking about. We've stopped thinking about the Mena Airport, if there's anything there to think about. We've stopped thinking about the Arkansas project. There's a lot there that never got adjudicated, and that goes, you say, why would you raise up something from 30 years ago, 40 years ago? Well, because the same patterns are playing themselves out now. The same dishonesty is present now. So I think that's, again, Trump going outside the box and doing something that could blow up or could be really shrewd.
Right, and it's interesting because, this means Dave is actually kind of like the number two guy. He's used to being in charge of a lot of things, at least, having run Citizens United for so long and doing so much. But, you go back to that early history, talk about his Clintonology. He worked for Congressman Burton, and they did a lot of investigation, when Burton was running the
oversight,
government
reform.
Yeah, and it was just amazing the amount of stuff that they were turning out. So,
shot the melon and all that.
Yeah, so Dave's got extensive knowledge on all of this that can be a tremendous asset to the Trump campaign if they stay focused and they want to go after Hillary.
Right, there is the danger with him is he has overshot in his life, and they need to attack. There's ample material to attack her on that's well within the political bounds and that is relevant to this race, this year, this time, and they need to keep the focus on that.
Yeah, I mean, look, Hillary's giving them a lot of material just now. The other stuff that they have, they can use to tie in and say, this is a long history of Hillary Clinton and/or Bill Clinton of kind of nefarious activities or lying and cover-ups that they're not transparent at all. So you could tie those together. But yeah, there is that danger that you will overshoot the target and everything, and that you will go too far. So that has happened. That's not unusual in the conservative movement. We right. sometimes do that, don't
right.
we? Let's talk about the polls. So CNN Orc poll came out. Trump is now up in that poll. Now, here's the thing about it for me with all these polls, and a lot of the other polls are showing a lot of tightening now of the race. My question here really is that that's great nationally, but what's happening statewide and getting down to the Electoral College, which is where it's all going to matter anyway, is this enough to start shifting those races, those states, that we're going to start seeing better numbers for Trump there?
My theory is if you get to the day when Real Clear Politics comes out and says, hey, Trump's not behind, he's up 1 point, 2 points, in all our averages of all the polls we see, then it's a watershed moment. All the people are like, can I really vote for Trump? Or like, well, I guess my friends are doing it. It's okay. Then you start talking about, you're running downhill. So I think he's very close to doing it. I think it is tighter than the Clinton people like to think, although I believe they are aware of it. I don't believe they're walking around in Never Never Land. I think they understand that it's at best tied, and probably they're a little bit behind right now.
Yeah, we have, 62 days. We've got the debates coming up on, was it September 26th, I think?
Yeah, and there's something tonight where they appear separately at a question. Someone's going to question them in like a town hall format. So it actually starts tonight. So
that's interesting, and so yeah, as we see this, I mean, I think the Clinton campaign probably is sweating it a little bit, that, and you combine with what Julian Assange is saying is like, oh, we might release some more stuff, maybe as early as this week or whatever.
Yeah. We're gonna start teasing it.
Yeah,
okay, come on.
We're not gonna wait till October. We're just gonna roll this out a little bit and just see how much you guys sweat. But yeah, if I were the Clinton camp, I mean, I'd be very nervous about what might come next on this.
I think they are. I think that they are petrified about what he has, and I don't know. I mean, why would you be petrified though? Because you did something wrong. So I think they're very scared, and I think that they're right to be.
All right. So Hillary, now I'm going to ask you for your opinion about this. So Hillary held a press gaggle, as they call it. So she was in the plane and talked with reporters. Does that technically qualify as a press conference enough to end the 275 days up to that point when she gave the gaggle, that we can now say that she's actually done enough with the press, that she's answered their questions? Well, is that a softball question?
Well, there's a couple of things interesting about that. First of all, I have not seen that the Democrats claim that this breaks the streak. So I think they realize that, asking me 3 questions about my plane and going on a coughing fit when you turn to tougher subjects does not a press conference make. And I think that there's still talk, I believe, of them trying to plan to think about doing one. So, which is odd because, I mean, Trump talks to hostile reporters every day and takes whatever question they give. It ought to, that ought to tell you something. It's like he's prepared with an answer. You may not like it, but he has something to say, and she is guarded because there's so much she can't answer.
Right, and even, once again, it probably wasn't a horrible gaggle for her overall, but she still doesn't do herself any favors because she talked about she was committed, to keeping things classified, but at the same point in time, it's like she says, I don't remember everything going back to those FBI notes that were released, and that C thought that was alphabetical. I mean, she's still talking about she's still mentioning some things that still just kind of just drive the hole a little bit deeper. I don't think she's got as deeply wounded this time as she has with other things, but she didn't help herself a whole lot either. Again, it continues to show that overall, Hillary on her feet, not a good campaign strategy for them. And so being guarded, keeping her away from the press is really the best strategy they have.
Right, that's right. And she chose a course when she's, I guess goes back to her Bernie Nussbaum days, just tell them you don't remember, right? How can they question what you remember, right? But she's chosen this road. She's chosen to say, it was, I think, 39 times during the FBI interview, which was not taped, recorded, notes taken, anything. But the FBI says 39 questions they asked. She said, I don't recall. Okay, so either you don't recall or you're lying. And if you don't recall, you're unfit either way, right? I don't think that we can have a president who doesn't. Which ones are our enemies, Madam President? Which ones do we bomb or not bomb? Which ones are our allies? I don't recall. Either you recall and you have recall of all these facts and command of all this information you supposedly have since you're running on experience, right? I know all this stuff because I've done all this stuff. Well, if you can't remember that stuff you did, then it's not valid to say I'm running on my experience, right? It's one or the other. And she has chosen to say, I can't recall. That makes all these health questions relevant, right? In a new and fresh way.
Yeah, and the FBI notes, I mean, the other thing about which I thought was interesting was that, so they did what I would consider to be a document dump. They dumped it on a Friday before Labor Day, and that seems to be kind of unusual in the sense of the FBI doing it like that. It did give the media a field day, the ones that jumped on that. They talk about the 39 times she said, I don't recall or I can't recall, kind of thing like that. But even more so was Mark Halperin on Morning Joe saying that basically he thought that FBI Director James Comey was acting like an arm of the Clinton campaign by doing this. I mean, it was like he was doing her a big favor by making sure this happens on a Friday before a long holiday weekend. Maybe people wouldn't notice as much and question as much. It does raise a lot of questions as to why did they choose Friday before Labor Day. I mean, how culpable are they on this?
I've known Comey for a long time. Seen like the straightest of straight shooters. But the one thing about this that I do not, I don't know him well. I'm not, he doesn't send me Chris cards or anything, but I don't want to overstate it. But
now.
I've talked to him over the years for a long time. The one thing about this I don't understand is why was Cheryl Mills allowed to sit in that interview? She's not. You can't be someone's attorney and their co-conspirator at the same time. And the rules of the FBI are we separate the co-conspirators, right? So they can't get their story straight. They can't gear up what lies have been told and so forth. So that to me, I don't know how they did it. It's like I don't know. I guess she had leverage on them that she didn't have to sit for that interview, and they really wanted that interview, and so they agreed to all kinds of stuff that I don't think they should have agreed to.
Yeah, and they did that interview, over the July 4th week. Just a lot of unusual things.
Another
dead, right, exactly. So it was very unusual what was going on there.
But the other thing is that, the staffing of news organizations needs to start taking into account Labor Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, the last day before the holiday, something's going to happen. Somebody's got to stay behind. It's like the guy who stays out of the State of the Union in case they blow it up, because that's how the government operates this day. Every holiday is a document dump.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So we also have the story about Nancy Pelosi coming out and saying that she thought there was too much being made of these emails, and there was a distraction of what we should really be talking about. And it's like, I don't know. I think we should be talking about the emails and things like that.
Voters decide that question. What's important. If it's not important, she'll win.
Right.
If it is important, she won't. That's not up to, I'm sure Nancy's view of what's important is shaped by, if we were talking about emails about Trump, then emails would be of utmost importance. To
Right,
Nancy
exactly.
Pelosi.
Because the other thing that she said too is that she wants to have like an agreement, I guess, with Paul Ryan, is to not talk about the hacked emails and all that. She wants them, them not to leak them and talk about that, because she knows right now how damning these things are going to be. But if the shoe was on the other foot, the roles were reversed.
Yeah.
That wouldn't. No, it'd be everything is fair game, right?
Right. It's Nancy Pelosi.
That's right. So,
Trying to remain relevant.
what about Bill Clinton? I love this story. Bill Clinton received $17.6 million over 5 years, or for a 5-year contract with Laureate International Universities to be an honorary chancellor. I didn't realize he really had those, but Laureate is apparently the former Sylvan Learning Systems and is actually thinking about going public and all of these things. So the guy behind it has done quite a job of running this operation. But $17.6 million to Bill Clinton.
Hey, I'd have done it for half that. I'd have been honorary chancellor for $6 million a year.
I would have done it for 3. I would have gotten a job ahead of you then.
The other thing about it is, Democrats are stridently against for-profit universities.
They're shutting them down.
They're doing their best, and they're doing, using the power of government to do it. Not letting, if they're a bad deal, as the Democrats claim they are, you get these degrees and people don't honor them or whatever, then they'll lose customers. They won't have customers. The problem will take care of itself. But they're like, oh no, we're protecting you from these malevolent forces, as we do payday loans and check cashing and everything else you need. We're going to take all that away. And here he is taking big money to rehabilitate their image. And that's a classic one of just that he is not against them, that he will stand with them, is a huge factor for those guys. It's much harder for Democrats to, hate on them with Bill Clinton standing there smiling with his check in his pocket.
Right. All right. So quick take, just like we did last week. So now we have John Tortorella coming out and saying that for this, as the USA hockey coach, what is that, the World Hockey Club or whatever, what's it called? So anyway, so he says that everybody will have to stand for the national anthem. If they sit, he's going to bench them. Thoughts, real quick.
I think that's. I think that your freedom of speech ends where your boss says it does. Right. So if your boss or your coach says it ends here, then you better stand up or you don't play. He has the right to do that. Just as, these other guys, if their boss, Colin Kaepernick's boss, is not saying stop, then he can keep going.
Right. All right. Well, we're right up against the time here, so our 2-minute warning, go.
Senate fundraising in August set all-time records for for Republicans. The liberal spin is they've given up on Trump and they're trying to build a firewall in the Senate. I think that Trump does not need them and does not act like he needs them, and so they have gone other places. And I think it could result in, since control of the Senate's going to come down to about 3 seats, that throwing a lot of money in them could make a lot of the difference. So I think the right thing's happening.
All right, and mine will be something that we didn't get to talk about really today, was just Chicago homicides have now surpassed the total for 2015, and we still have 3-4 months to go here in the year. So they're up to 488 homicides versus 481 last year, and the police are basically blaming it on repeat offenders and illegal guns. But once again, this is a very tightly controlled city with gun control in theory, right?
Right.
So what is going on with that? I mean, I think that's a lame excuse as far as I'm concerned. Every time this happens, they blame it on illegal guns and they say we need more gun control, but they've already got it. So there's other issues at play here.
Mayor Barry needs to get this taken care of.
All right. Well, with that, I think we're out of time, and thank you for joining us. And then until next week, please join us again for the Bias Buzz.
Bullseye.